It is the late 1980s and you are looking for a new executive car. You turn on your Macintosh SE from work only to find it is of no use because it just has Excel on it and no internet, because the internet wasn't widely adopted at the time. Teletext and CFAX don't have the answers you're looking for, but Top Gear is on.
Hello, I'm Chris Goffey, and right behind
the best old Top Gear presenter. Comment below if you agree. And the new guy, I'm not sure of his name, the guy with the weird haircuts reviewing a Bentley. Of course, that's not within our budget. But after much research and breaking out the magazines, you whittle it down to a list of 17 cars. You, however, have an advantage, a bit of late 2010s and 2020s technology, the tier list. In today's video, we are going to make a tier list of late 80s executive cars released from between 1986 to 1988. I have included the XM in here as well because there isn't enough Citroen representation. Drop a comment below. Have I missed anything? Is there anything you would change? Do you agree with my list? And make sure to subscribe. But let's get into the tier list. But in fact, before that, I think I need to put on something from the Rover Elegance collection. Suitable attire equipped. We now move on to the tier list. Now, if you guys don't know already how this works, it goes from S tier, which is the best, to D tier, which is the worst. And yeah, that's basically it. So we have all the cars here. I have my SD1 to play with, the Corgi SD1. It's quite interesting, these little things. Anyway, I'm talking off thing. So let's have a look at the tier list. First on our list, we have the Alfa Romeo 164, produced between 1987 and 1998. This, of course, was styled by Pininfarina, who makes some of the most beautiful cars in the world. This was assembled in Lombardy in Italy and is just a brilliant piece of design. Fun fact that the Alfa Romeo 164 is based on the same platform, the Type 4 platform, the same platform as the Fiat Croma, the Saab 9000 and the Lancia Thema. Just an amazing, amazing car. Preceded by the Alfa 90 and the Alfa 6 as well. This is the pinnacle of Alfa Romeo luxury and executive cars. Range started at a 2-litre twin-spark inline 4, 8-valve, straight through to a 3-litre Alfa Romeo Busso V6, 24-valve, which I'm not even going to say much about that engine. I'm just going to put a picture on the screen. Brilliant, brilliant engine, an amazing sound. Of course, this car is now quite rare in the UK, with only about 70, give or take, registered, which is quite interesting. That's of all variants. This, however, is going to be going in the B tier because of that rear end. Yeah, the rear end just really kills it for me, unfortunately. But yeah, I think that's a good way to start off in the B tier. Next on our list is the Audi 100. Of course, originally introduced this model range in the year 1968, and it was produced all the way up to 1997, where it was replaced by the Audi A4. The C3 is the variant we'll be looking at, and it is absolutely incredible. There's only about 200 left in all variants, give or take, in the UK registered, so it is quite a rare car. It's a bit less rare than the 164, but I've seen more 164s in the wild, which is a bit weird. Anyway, so of course you have the legendary inline 5 petrol engines that the Quattro came with, the Quattro UR, etc. That thing, Sport Quattro. You have a diesel inline 5 as well, and right at the bottom of the range you have a few other smaller engines like the 1.8 litre inline 4. The diesels are quite interesting because you do have a 2.5 litre TDI as well. Of course, for me, this car is the styling. It is a very handsome boy, but weirdly the brown, it almost makes it look like an Ital when it's in brown. The base specification with no alloy wheels, etc., it looks like an Ital. I know people are going to cry about that, but come on now. It was also produced between 1983 and 1992, so a little bit of a run, about 9 years. For me, the Avant really kills it. The Avant is the best looking estate of the 80s period. It is fantastic, the Audi 100 Avant. For that alone, of course, we are going to put it in the very middle of B tier. Sadly, it's not that exciting. The interior just doesn't do it for me either. The two vents on one side, the one vent on the other. Yeah, they might have opposing uses and all that stuff, but to me, I hate that sort of thing. So that wraps up our Audi 100. Next, we have the successor to the SD1. Not quite following its footsteps. There's a lot of people got hung up on the fact it didn't come with a V8. This, of course, is the Rover 800, originally introduced in 1985 with the 825 and the 825 Sterling and all the other models, the SI, etc., SLI, all that stuff. Of course, it was followed by a fastback or liftback version in 1988, which came in various models, the 820 with the inline 4 2-litre, all the way up to the C27, a 2.7 litre V6, which was originally a Honda engine. Now, this car was produced in collaboration with Honda to share the development costs out and to give Honda a bit more of a foothold in the UK, and to help them produce their first ever, and I'd probably say one of the first ever proper global Japanese executive cars. Now, the 800 for me is, I mean, God, you can sort of tell. I mean, we're very 800-y in this household because I own one. Yes, I do. My car is J739 ODU. It is a Vitesse, and it is fantastic. It is Quicksilver. Now, for me, Cowley produced, brilliant car. Of course, it met its fate in 1991, where the XX model, so the first generation 800, was replaced by the second generation with the grille and the airbags. So, for me, I really like the styling of this. However, the electrics are really irritating. I've had numerous ABS issues, and of course they do rust, but they just rust as well as a lot of other cars. A lot of things that people seem to moan about, and it's just a bit off topic. People always moan about British Leyland and all the British cars, but then sit there and think Ford Escorts were the pinnacle of engineering. All cars were as crap as each other, just some had more crap than other cars, and some were remembered for being crap, and others were painted over with pop culture and rose-tinted glasses. Now, I'm not saying any of these cars are perfect, and I'm not saying British Leyland made amazing cars, but they certainly didn't make as much crap as people make out. Now, anyway, the Rover 800, after that statement, I'm putting that in S tier, because you know why? Because I can do whatever I like on this tier list. Next on our list is a bit of a wild card because it was released in 1989. It is the Citroen XM. Now, the Citroen XM has hydro-pneumatic suspension, which already makes it cool. It's sort of the second to last great Citroen. Obviously, the C6 is the final one, which was released in the early 2000s. Fantastic. This is sort of the last, well, one of the last innovative, crazy Citroens. The DS9 is out though. Of course, this car was produced in France, in Mulhouse, about 350,000 built, but only about 230 left on British roads, which is pretty crazy. So, of course, this was introduced in 1989, and after a few facelifts was discontinued in the new millennium in 2000. Of course, you've got a few engines here. You've got the 2-litre XU10 inline 4, the 16-valve version of that engine as well in the 2-litre configuration, all the way up to a 2.9 ESL V6 with 24 valves. Fantastic car, styling is amazing, absolutely insane. For me, the 1990 European Car of the Year is going to go in A tier for absolutely amazing because it's a Citroen, and you cannot argue with that. Next on our list is the wonderful Mark I, first generation Ford Scorpio. Not to be obviously confused with the second generation, which a lot of people tend to hate that, and I don't really see why. It's a cute little frog looking car. Anyway, this car was introduced in 1985 and produced all the way up to 1994 with a minor facelift in the middle, adding a very interesting looking grille. The first generation is of course what we're going to be looking at, the pre-facelift. Sort of, the styling is very pinned to that time of the late 80s, where everything was very sleek, sort of like the Sierra. Now, of course, you started with the venerable 1.8 litre overhead cam Pinto engine, moving all the way to the Cosworth BOA V6 dual overhead cam at 2.9 litres. Of course, you've got a few diesel engines in there, two of which are Peugeot engines, and both of those are 2.5 litres. Now, for me, the Ford it's interesting. It was also obviously, as you know, referred to as the Ford Granada and the Mercury Scorpio in other countries. For me, it's essentially a stretched version of the Sierra, but that's essentially what the floor pan is. Now, for me, it's very interesting. It's a very interesting car. The rear lights let it down a bit, the wheel choices let it down a little bit, and the way the front washer jets stick out let it down a lot, really a lot. So for sticky out washer jets, it's just such a fantastic car though, because the interior is crazy nice as well on these. I think because it had similar radical styling to the Sierra, which sort of messed Ford up a bit after obviously replacing the Cortina, I would say I'm going to put this in C tier because it's not at the bottom of the barrel, but it's not as good as the BMW, the Audi or the Alfa Romeo. Next on our list we have the Lancia Thema, the Type 834 as it's referred to internally. Now the Lancia Thema had one generation and a facelift. Of course, it was then reproduced in 2011 to 2014, very briefly. Now you have the FF, which is the Thema 1, and the FR, which is the Thema 2. We're going to be looking at both due to our little time frame that we've got. Now the Thema, fun fact, was of course produced on the Type 4 platform, which was a Fiat platform. As I mentioned earlier, the Fiat Chroma, Saab 9000 and the Alfa 164 share that platform. Now the Thema is a very interesting one because there is literally, and I'm not making this up, there is less than 20 currently registered. Now the Thema has a few notable variants. Of course, it's got a 2.5 litre turbo diesel inline 4. But it also has the legendary Ferrari by Lancia V8 engine. Now it's quite an interesting car. The only thing that really lets it down, of course, is the interior, but to me it is not that big of a deal. I'm going to put it in B tier with the rest of them. Sadly, a very short production run, I think, compared to the majority of the cars, and obviously it was then revived obviously in 2011, well it was about 10 years, so yeah, not particularly short, 1984 to 1994. The only issue I probably have, and it's of course not based on this rating system, it was reintroduced as essentially a rebadged Chrysler 300C, which is disgusting really, to be fair, but the 300C ain't exactly a bad car, so. But it's quite sad to see once great Italian design car reproduced as a Chrysler. Yeah, that's about that really. Of course, next on our list we have the Mercedes-Benz 124. So this, of course, follows the legendary 123, and it was introduced in 1984, killing off that fantastic, the best E-Class ever made. What we call an E-Class. Now, you've got several variations of this. You've got the W124, the saloon, the S124, which is the estate, the C124, which is the coupe, the A124, which is the cabriolet, the V124, which is the limousine, and a rolling chassis, which I didn't know they ever produced, so which is the F124. Now, this, in my head, is the ultimate car, and it literally does everything. It is incredibly safe. It is the baby Benz. It is a pioneering design. It is essentially, it created just, it's a fantastic car. Of course, it had a pretty long production run, 1984 to 1995. So it's just a friggin' amazing car. About 2.5 million built as well. Now there's loads left on the UK roads. I think there's about 1,000 odd. So compared to the rest of them, the survivability rate is very high. But obviously, it has that brand cachet that the rest don't have. It is a legendary car. It's had, it has a fantastic history, and it's just, it's one of those cars that will never ever die. Obviously, the 123 before it set such a high standard and it's such a hard act to follow that car. I think there's a taxi. I think it's in Turkey or somewhere, or Indonesia. I think one of those places where it's on about 1 million odd miles. I think it got inducted into the Mercedes-Benz Museum because of that fact as well. Really, really fantastic. So for that, it has to go in S tier with the Rover 800. I know, it's a bit, it's not at all surprising. I'm a big Mercedes person. So if Rover was still being produced, though, I'd be an insanely massive Rover person. But unfortunately not, so I have nowhere to go after the Rover 75. I've just got to sort of hope it lasts for the rest of my life. Next on our list is a frigging living legend, the Peugeot 405. This car has had an incredible run. Obviously, it was initially introduced in 1987, with production ending in Europe in 1997. Now, this is where it gets a bit tricky. In 1992, it started being produced in Iran and was produced up until this year, 2022. So it has had an incredible, incredible life. It was European Car of the Year a year after its launch in 1988, with the largest number of votes in history in the contest. It really is a cracking car. I've seen these all over the place, some with 200,000 miles, and there really isn't that many left. So if we consult how many left, we'll see. But I believe there is, I think there's less than 400 left. Yeah, there's, wow, my God, oh wow, that's depressing. There's less than 300 left. That is just sad. You see, this car is a real, it's a proper Pininfarina design. It obviously is similar styling cues to the 164, but I think it looks better, to be honest with you. I think it's a better looking car than the Alfa 164. Of course, it had the legendary versions of it, the MI16, and then obviously you've got the bargain basic, the 2 litres, etc., etc., the inline fours. But this is a fantastic car. It even has a motorsport heritage, obviously in the British Touring Car Championship and in the Paris-Dakar Rally and Pikes Peak, which was conquered by the 405 GR Turbo 16. Really, 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 really cool car. Of course, it was even, it's produced everywhere. It was produced in Zimbabwe, Taiwan, Poland, the UK, Indonesia, Iran, Egypt, Chile, Azerbaijan, Argentina, and then of course in France. Friggin' amazing. The best. It's still produced in Egypt today. Iran's production ended this year. It is still currently being produced in Egypt with no plans to end production anytime soon. That is frigging amazing. Just insane. And fun fact as well, it shares the floor pan with the Citroen BX, which is one of the coolest cars ever to exist. Really fantastic. Sadly, there's no coupe though. I would have loved a coupe. If there was a coupe version of that, we all know how good Peugeot coupes are. I would be all over it. So S tier, no doubt. Next on our list is the Renault 21, introduced in 1986 with production ending in 1994. This car is one of the best looking Renaults ever created. Now, what I really like about it is how interesting the top of the front is. You can see it's sort of like cut out, so you could essentially take that off and do something else with it. It's really interesting. I've only just noticed that looking at it. Now, of course, this car succeeded the Renault 18, and then, of course, it was followed by a station wagon, which was the Renault 21 Nevada. In the UK, it was also marketed as the Savannah. The Nevada was, anyway. It's very weird, but essentially it was just a massive station wagon / estate. with 7 friggin' seats. Of course, it's a Giugiaro design. It's been produced in France, Italy, Colombia, Argentina, Chile, Taiwan, Belgium, Iran and Venezuela. Sadly not lasting as long as the rest of the French exports. It was known as the Eagle Medallion, the Renault Etoilette in Colombia and the Renault Medallion. It is one of the best looking cars ever created by Renault. It is one of those just insanely cohesive designs. Of course, it had the Renault 21 Turbo, which is probably one of the nicest fast saloons of the 80s, the nicest looking ones anyway. Of course, Renault, like I mentioned with Citroen, didn't have the brand cachet back then, in the early 2000s, so people were just smashing these through the scrappage scheme and just getting rid of them, and it's a damn shame. So the amount that are currently left is about 30, which is very depressing. So that is really sad. How many 21 turbos are there? 21 turbo quad. Yeah, the turbo quadra. The turbo quadra is another legendary name. You got the 21 turbo and the 21 turbo quadra. There's about 17 of those. What more can I say? Fantastic. What a car. And the interior was really good as well. Yeah, it's just an interesting car. A funny thing as well, there was a stupid, it's called the Manager 2000, introduced in Turkey, with a 2 litre 120 brake horsepower engine. Don't know why they called it the Manager, it just looked interesting. It was the, obviously second from the entry level, which is really, really weird. I don't know why we call it the Manager. I guess it must sound different in Turkish, but yeah. The Renault 21 for me, one of the best cars ever created by the French, and that's going in S tier. Next up is the Type 4 platformed Saab 9000, introduced in 1984 and then discontinued in May 1998, the longest production run on our list. Now, you've got 2 distinct models, the CD, which is the saloon, and the CC or CS, which is the liftback version or fastback or whatever you want to call it. Now you've got several engines. I don't believe it was offered in a diesel either. The 2 litre inline-4 B202 all the way up to the 3 litre V6 B308. All of these is Saab designed engines. Now this is a Giugiaro designed car. Of course, like I mentioned, Type 4 platform in conjunction with Fiat. It's probably one of the nicest looking Saabs ever made. The only issue is it looks a bit frumpy. It looks a bit big in the middle section. The typical 3 square layout, front, mid, rear, it looks very big in the middle. And the front styling, it's sort of, it looks like, you know, when you get them, people edit people to have really small faces, it kind of looks like that, but regardless, it's friggin' fantastic. Also, did I mention it has, I'd say probably the 3rd best survivability rate out of the list, with about 400, I believe, still being registered in the UK and on the road, with one of which being the turbo version, which is the most popular. It's quite interesting, of course, that being the 2.3 litre turbo or the 2 litre B202 inline-4 petrol. Now, the thing for me with these is these are large, these are massive cars with a 105.2 inch wheelbase. They even if that isn't the biggest, they still seem massive in real life. For me, if I was to pick from the 4, the issue that I have in this case is the Saab has better crash protection in tests than the Thema, the Fiat, and the Alfa. So the issue that we've got though is you won't look good in the crash that you survive in that. It's still a nice car though, that's the issue. With the Aero one, anything that can pull off 3-spoke alloys is a good world-beating car. I'm going to have to put this in, out of the Type 4s, it's quite hard to rate it like this, but I'm going to put it in the C tier. And that's sad, it's just that midsection that lets it down. It goes very plain in the middle and I don't really like that. The back as well isn't the best looking, I'm afraid, but the interior is freaking sublime. The interior is sublime, so we're gonna have to put it there, I'm afraid. Sorry about that, Saab people. I know you wanted it to come top, but it's not. It's not as good as the Renault. Next on our list is the Volvo 740. This model was introduced in early 1984 and ran its production up until 1992. Probably the best estate car ever made. It came obviously in the estate and the four-door saloon. You of course had the pretty legendary 2.4 litre D24 TID inline 6 diesel, which everybody turns into a smoke machine. And in the petrol category we have the 2 litre inline 4 all the way up to the 2.3 litre turbo inline 4 for the hot versions. Now the Volvo is the styling is in that weird so bad, well I wouldn't say it's bad, in the so simple it's complex category. The Volvo, the survivability rate is pretty good actually, with around 380 of all variants still being in the UK and registered. Now this is a global car, of course it was in the US and Australia in 1985, so they got it a year later. The thing is funnily enough, people think these things weigh about 2 or 3 tons. They actually only weigh around 1,481 kilograms. So that's not a lot when you think about it, compared to obviously my 2.1 ton Rover 75. You've got several trim levels. You've got the GL, the GLE, SE, GLT and the 740 Turbo. These were worldwide trim versions as well, so there's no crap getting changed about everywhere, which is one thing I hate about a lot of cars. It ain't my cup of tea. Unfortunately, I can't find exact numbers on how many are left, but I haven't seen one in years. So, to be honest with you, I find this car not particularly interesting. It would look good slammed on air suspension and with some BBS alloy wheels or rotor forms, but I don't really fancy that. It's very boring. It's going in the D category, and that is about that. I was going to include the XJ40 like I said, but it's an F segment car. That is about it, my friends. Drop me suggestions below on what the next tier list should be. I'm looking for either the 90s small cars, early 90s small cars, early 80s execs, or 80s, early 80s or 80s, mid-size family cars and small executives, or even we could do an F segment one, whichever you like. Drop me a comment below, let me know what you think, and that is about that for this one. So thank you for watching, keep watching, let me know your opinions on my tier list, and remember to subscribe for more of this and other stuff.